Vengeful spirits have been a part of Japanese folklore for an incredibly long time, dating back as far as 8 AD, and while there is nothing new about these stories, they are still some of the most fascinating and terrifying ones that you'll ever come across. The Kisaragi Station is a Japanese urban legend originating on the Tuchen message boards in 2004 and revolves around private railway at Shizuoka. Shared as an anecdote in the thread post about strange occurrences around you, thread 26, the tale recounted how the anonymous user, who was later identified as Hasumi, awoke in a train carriage with all other passengers asleep. As Hasumi struggled with the mystery, she would constantly have exchanges with users at the message board, advising her and sharing such confusion. It was her routine commute to work, but the train was strangely barreling to a destination without any stops as usual. The conductor and driver were both inaccessible to every effort, isolating her from any answers explaining the train deviating from a normal schedule. Finally, after an unexpectedly long trip of an hour, the train stopped at Kisaragi Station late into the night, an apparently vacant lot of no discernible activity. Hasumi was adamant to leave the train, however, as such a profoundly discomforting experience. Consulting with users online at their thread, Hasumi was advised there's no such station listed online and she should withdraw immediately, but they persisted. As Hasumi wandered outside the station and took advice from people on the message board, she desperately tried to locate a taxi to no success. Defeated, she discovered a telephone booth, dialed her parents and requested they collect her, but they were unable to determine where she is exactly as Kisaragi Station appeared on no maps. Her parents urged her to contact emergency services as lost. This would prove futile when they merely dismissed her as a prankster. Hasumi's experience soon became more ominous, bells ringing from the station, a drumbeat intensifying and the overall location completely unidentifiable. Terrified to return into the station with an apparently otherworldly festival transpiring, she climbed onto nearby tracks to abruptly have somebody interrupt who screamed, "Hey! Don't walk on the track, that's dangerous." Turning around, Hasumi witnessed a one-legged old man, not an attendant, who immediately vanished, her fear only amplified at such a surreal event. In a state of ensuing panic consequently, Hasumi fled along the track rashly and into a darkened tunnel, stumbling and injuring herself in a reckless manner. She soon reached the end of the tunnel and was welcomed by a friendly man who offered a ride to safety, unusual for this hour, and also at such a location. No choices remaining, Hasumi accepted and accompanied the man into a summoned car headed into distant mountains. The friendly man became silent, and Hasumi was unnerved as her surroundings became increasingly unfamiliar. Hasumi completely disappeared and her last message board post was,
"My battery's almost run out. Things are getting strange, so I think I'm going to make a run for it." He's been talking to himself about bizarre things for a while now. To prepare for just the right time, I'm going to make this my last post for now.
Akamanto is an urban legend from Japan. Akamanto is either depicted as a serial killer or a ghost who haunts an old toilet in school. When the student uses the bathroom, he will ask them if they want red paper or blue paper. In some versions he asks if you want a cape or a vest. Depending on the student's answer, they will be killed in a bunch of colorful ways. They could be stabbed until their clothes are stained red, have their head chopped off, or had the flesh ripped off of their back in a cape-like pattern for red, or have their body drained of all blood, or strangled to death for blue. In a school in Tokyo, Japan, there is said to be a ghost, named Akamanto, who haunts the girls' bathroom. Every kid at school knew about Akamanto, so they always avoided the old bathroom by the gymnasium. One day, a young girl desperately needed to use the bathroom. Since it was the closest one, she decided to use the old bathroom that no one used. She thoughtlessly picked the fourth stall to do her business, since it looked the cleanest. When the girl reached for some toilet paper, she found none in the dispenser. That's when she heard the voice of Akamanto outside the stall door. "Do you want red paper or blue paper?" he asked. "Red paper," the girl replied. Akamanto burst down the door of the stall and began stabbing her. He didn't stop until every inch of her clothing was stained red from her blood. Many months later, another young girl found herself in desperate need of a bathroom. While she knew about the unsolved murder that had taken place in the gymnasium bathroom, she was too desperate to find another bathroom. When she finished her business in the fourth stall, she found no toilet paper in the dispenser. "Do you want red paper or blue paper?" Akamanto asked, lurking outside her stall. The young girl remembered what had happened to the other girl who had answered red paper, so she answered blue paper. The police found her dead in the stall later that evening. Her face had turned blue from being suffocated to death. Another year passed, and again a third girl found herself using the bathroom by the gymnasium. Knowing the stories of the girls who had been killed, this girl brought her own paper to use. Upon opening her bag, though, she found that the paper she had brought had disappeared. Red paper or blue paper? Akamanto asked. Desperate to not die like the others, the girl requested a third option. Yellow paper. She was dragged down into the underworld through the toilet she had just used. It said that Akamanto still haunts the fourth stall of that same bathroom to this day. Teachers refuse to let any other students anywhere close to that bathroom out of fear of what lurks inside. It is still possible to use that bathroom though, but if you do, be prepared to answer red paper or blue paper. This version of Akamanto was first created in the 1930s, though other versions have existed much longer than that. Over the past 70 years, his appearance has changed from wearing a short red sleeveless kimono jacket to a long red cloak or cape due to the slight changes to the Japanese lexicon over the years. Many stories influenced the creation of Akamanto. One of them was the story of Kanade, another toilet-dwelling monster. Kanade lurks in the bathrooms of old houses in Kyoto and will only show up on February 3rd, the Setsubun festival in Japan. Kanade. When someone squats over a traditional Japanese toilet, a pair of hands come up to touch your bottom. The only way to stop him is to squat and ask white paper or red paper. Then he'll leave you alone. Another version of Akamanto has him kidnapping and killing people. The story goes that a man wearing a red blanket visits a small shop late at night. He explains that he is a servant from the main house and that his master is very sick. He convinces the father to come help him and comes back for the mother a few hours later. He comes a third time to get the kids, but the neighbors insist that they sleep. The man in the red blanket grudgingly leaves. The couple is found dead, and the red blanket man is never found again. This story is based off the true crime story of Aogedo murder, or blue blanket murder. In Fukui, Japan in 1906, 3 family members were taken by a man wearing a blue blanket over his head. It was assumed they were brutally murdered. Due to the documents never being released in English, I am unsure how the investigation of the crime ended. The Tik-Tik, or Tek-Tek, is a Japanese urban legend about a girl who fell on a railway line and was cut in two. She is an onrum, or a vengeful spirit, who lurks in urban areas and around train stations at night. She has no lower half and carries a scythe and travels on her hands while searching for victims to cut in two, mimicking her accident. The Tik-Tik is universally portrayed as a girl or a young woman, usually with long, black hair. She is often portrayed as having claws instead of fingernails or fingers, as these help her drag her torn body around. The legend is called Tik-Tik because of the sound she makes while walking and carrying the scythe. Like most urban legends, there are so many versions of the Tik-Tik story that it is impossible to know what the original story was or where it began from. Every locality has its own version with different details. In some stories, the Tik-Tik was the victim of a tragic accident. In others, it was suicide. In some stories, certain magic charms can protect you from its wrath. In others, nothing can protect you and you will certainly die. In some versions, the Tik-Tik's victims become Tik-Tik themselves. There are many things in common between these variations, and the most common ones point towards a woman from Hokkaido named Kashimori Aiko. In the years after World War II, an office worker in Murin, Hokkaido was assaulted by military personnel. She was left injured on the rail tracks and was hit by a train which cut off her body in half. The severe cold of the Hokkaido night caused her blood vessels to contract and prevented her from bleeding out quickly. Instead, she squirmed and wriggled around for help for several minutes. She was seen by an attendant. Instead of trying to help her, the station attendant just covered her with a plastic bag. She died a slow, agonizing death. According to legend, 3 days after hearing this story, you will see the ghost of a woman with no lower half. The ghost will try to catch you, and escape is impossible even in a car. The ghost can crawl at a speed of up to 150 kilometers per hour. Some say that the ghost is searching for her missing legs. Others say that she is simply out to slaughter as many people as she can. Another version of the story suggests that the legend was designed to deter people from bullying, abusing or assaulting others. In many variations of the legend, the Tik-Tik was mistreated by others in life, and this ill treatment directly caused her death. The only reason why she rose from the grave was to get revenge on others, albeit rather indiscriminately. So the moral of the story is, be kind to others or they may just split you in half. Now that is a message that speaks to all of us. The Tik-Tik is a malevolent Japanese ghost demon that has entered the domain of both urban legend and horror franchise in its own right, similar to the more infamous Kuchisakana. Her name comes from the sound she makes as she pursues victims, running across the ground using her hands as her entire lower section has been torn off, leaving nothing but her upper torso and arms by which the demon hunts down her prey. They belong to a very large subtype of Japanese demon known as the vengeful ghost, usually women. These demons were once human, but became monsters after death and now exist to kill and torment the living. Tik-Tik was originally a human called Chizo, who was bullied and/or raped, which caused her to jump off a train station onto the tracks. Chizo was then cut in half by an incoming train. She barely survived due to the cold weather. Tik crawled to a person for help, but upon seeing her disfigurement, they left her to die. Her vengeful spirit now stalks the streets of Japan. As a young schoolboy was walking home at night, he spotted a beautiful young girl standing by a windowsill resting on her elbows. They smiled at each other for a moment. The boy wondered what a girl was doing in an all-boys school, but before he could wonder more about the girl, she jumped out of the window and revealed her lower half was missing. Frightened, he stood in the sidewalk, but before he could run, she caught up to his location quickly and cut the boy in half. If someone saw or was spotted by the Tik-Tik near them at night, the Tik-Tik will pursue them, armed with either a saw or a scythe. But if that person was not fast enough, she will slice them in half at the torso, mimicking her own demise.